Hey guys, what you're looking at is an image depicting Jesus in the temple when he was a boy. It comes from the story in Luke 2, verses 41 through 47, where Mary and Joseph went down to Jerusalem, and when they left, Jesus stayed behind and was in the temple. And of course, they went back. They found out he wasn't with them, so they went back to get him. So in this image, if you were to Google other images of Jesus as a boy in the temple, what you're going to find is that they're all going to look very similar to the one you're looking at right now. So I want you to look at this image and get a mental picture, in your mind, an idea of what is taking place in this scene. And I'm going to give you just a few seconds to think about it, and then I will chime in with my interpretation. Okay, what I see in this scene is you have Jesus surrounded by these people in the temple, which would be most likely the Sadducees and the Pharisees, the teachers of the law. And it looks like everybody is paying attention to Jesus. They're listening to him and looking at him in various degrees of wonderment and thought about what it is he seems to be saying. So let's go and read this section of Scripture. And I'm in Bible Gateway. I'm going to be reading from the NIV version, simply because it's just a lot easier to understand in modern English. Okay, here we go. Every year, Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem for the festival of the Passover. When he was 12 years old, they went up to the festival according to the custom. After the festival was over, while his parents were returning home, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem, but they were unaware of it. Thinking he was in their company, they traveled for a day. Then they began looking for him among their relatives and friends. When they did not find him, they went back to Jerusalem to look for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple courts, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. Everyone who heard him was amazed at his understanding and his answers. Okay. Let's look specifically at verse 46. After 3 days, they found him in the temple courts, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. Okay, let's look at our image again. Does this look to you like Jesus is listening to them and asking them questions? It looks a lot more like to me that they are listening to him and perhaps even asking him questions. And I say, if you look up images of this particular scene, they're all going to look very similar to this. So you have to ask yourself, if Jesus was indeed listening to them and asking them questions, why does all the artwork and pictures and images of this particular section of Scripture show everyone around Jesus? He's always the center, always in the middle, always the center of attention, and everyone seems to be looking at him and listening to him. So again, I ask the question, if Jesus was indeed listening to them and asking them questions, why does all the artwork and images that we can find depict the scene like this? Okay, let's go back. Reading again from 46 through 47. After 3 days, they found him in the temple courts, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. Everyone who heard him was amazed at his understanding and his answers. Now hang on a second. In verse 46 it says, he was listening to them and asking them questions. But in verse 47, it says, everyone who heard him was amazed at his understanding and his answers. So again, I ask you, who was asking who questions? In verse 46, what we read says that Jesus was asking them questions. But in verse 47, clearly, he's answering questions. And everyone was amazed at his understanding and answers. So, verse 46 and verse 47 don't seem to be agreeing with one another. So we look back at all these images and artwork, and they seem to show that everyone's listening to Jesus, which agrees with what we see in verse 47. Everyone who heard him, which means he wasn't listening, he was speaking, was amazed at his understanding and his answers. So verse 47 tells us that Jesus was speaking and answering other people's questions, whereas verse 46 tells us that he was sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. Again, I say verse 46 and verse 47 are not in agreement with each other. And I bring this up, and I bring up the artwork, because my memory of this verse is that Jesus was speaking in the temple and that the teachers of the law were asking him questions. That's what I remember from verse 46. Now, I can't say with absolute certainty that I am absolutely certain that that's what it said, but I'm about 70% certain. So you guys, if you have comments, please leave them in the comments. Let me know what you remember. But clearly verse 46 and 47 do not agree with one another. And also the artwork that we see doesn't agree with verse 46. Okay, let's get into what I actually have some proof for. We're going to look here. I'm in Q Bible now. This is Luke 2. This is the King James Version. Okay. And we're going to go down to verse 46. Overshot that rascal. Okay, this is verse 46 in the King James Version. And it came to pass that after 3 days they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the doctors, both hearing them and asking them questions. Doctors. Okay, well, the NIV translates it as teachers, but the King James, we see doctors. Okay, let's look up this word. We see that it is Strong's 1320. So we're going to go to Blue Letter Bible. Now, this is the Greek, so we're no longer in the Gesenius lexicon. We are now in Thayer's Greek English lexicon. And one of the things about Thayer's, it was, I believe, 1901 when Thayer's lexicon was published. Now, at that time, there were two prominent, widely used versions of the Bible. You had the King James Version, which is also called the Authorized Version, and you have the Revised Version. Now, I have other proofs that I could show you in this lexicon, but the problem is the Revised Version and the King James Version, on a lot of these things that I have evidence for, they're different. So I'm only going to use the ones where the King James Version and the Revised Version say exactly the same thing. And in this case, they both have doctors. Okay? So now let's look in the lexicon, and let's find right here in the second definition we have Luke 2:46 referenced specifically. And let's see what the definition they have there. Of the teachers of the Jewish religion. And then there's a reference to Luke 2:46 and the reference to John 3:10. Okay. So we have the NIV, which is a legitimate it's a translation from the original scrolls and things that they found. It's not taking the King James or something else and then turning it into modern English. It translates it as doctors. Here in Thayer's lexicon, we see that word 1320 is teachers. Teachers of the Jewish religion, which would have been the people in the temple that Jesus was talking to. So we have several things going on with this scripture. Like I say, as I remember it, Jesus was the one doing the speaking, and the teachers of the law were asking him questions. And then in the King James Version, we have the word doctors. Now, also, let's look back up here in Blue Letter Bible, where we have, okay, here is the King James translation count for this Greek word. It appears 58 times. We see that it is translated master 40 times, and in almost all of those cases it's referring to Jesus. We see that it is translated teacher 10 times, and master also 7 times when not referring to Jesus. And we see it's translated doctor once. One time this word is translated doctor. And doctors aren't teachers anyway. So, guys, this is, in my mind, clearly a changed verse. We have the entire setup where I remember Jesus is doing the speaking and the questions are asked of him, which verse 47 seems to confirm that. And now in the NIV and the King James, it says that Jesus is listening to them and asking them questions. And then also here in the King James and also the Revised Version, this word is translated, which appears 58 times, and it's translated as doctor in this verse. Guys, it wasn't doctor. It was teacher. So, I hope you guys like this video. Feel free to leave me some comments. I think this is some more compelling evidence that we have a Bible change here. Okay, talk to you guys next time.